taught me how to live. Daddy taught me how to give. Both of them had their own sins. Down to the river, every man has felt the shame. All our blood, it runs the same. Father, hear us as we pray. Down to the river, down to the river. Sing, oh, oh, bury me, carry me, oh, oh, far beneath, oh, oh, fire and water me, going down deep, singing, oh, oh, bury me, carry me, oh, oh, far beneath, oh, oh, fire and water me, washing me clean, carry sea,
Welcome to the Cryptid Wilderness Research Podcast. So glad you could be with us tonight. Matt, how are things in Washington State?
Oh, it's getting cold. It's starting to get real cold, and they're starting to get quite a bit of snow up in the mountains already. And it's a little bit concerning because of the huge wildfires they had this summer. So waiting to see how much snowpack there is, because that's going to show how much melt there's going to be with no tree structure.
Oh, yeah. Right now here in Alaska, we've got freezing rain, and traffic alerts are already going out over the cell phones just within the last 5 minutes, because you know how Anchorage gets
Yeah.
at around this time of night. So and during the rush hour. Now tonight, we got a great guest, and this is somebody I have looked forward to talking to for a while, and he has an absolutely impressive resume. And he's been on, I like to say, been on just about every show out there. His name's Chester Moore. And Chester Moore is an award-winning wildlife journalist, conservationist, and investigator. He's the host of Dark Outdoors, a podcast that investigates true crime, strange encounters, and unsolved mysteries in the great outdoors. He has been seen on many wildlife television programs, including Animal Planet's Animal X, Nat Geo's When Sharks Attack. That would scare the crap out of me. And various programs on Discovery, the Travel Channel, the Outdoor Channel, and Destination America. He and his wife, Lisa, are children's advocates and are the founders of the Wild Wishes program that grants wildlife encounters for children with critical illnesses, traumatic loss, and other life struggles. And I had a chance to look at their site for that earlier today, and what a fantastic program. So we are going to ask about that. Yeah. He contributes to dozens of magazines and web platforms, is the editor-in-chief of Texas Fish and Game magazine, and produces weekly content on his blog at darkoutdoors.com. And so happy to have him. Let's bring him in. Chester Moore.
Yo, gentlemen. I'm sitting here thinking about the places you're at. And I'm thinking about a lot of my favorite wildlife lives in Alaska. I love Dall sheep, and you in Washington with California bighorns and mountain goats and grizzlies up in Alaska and caribou, man. And I'm just excited to talk to some dudes from some cool spots.
Well, we appreciate you being with us. And Matt and I have had our encounters with the wildlife up here. I can tell you that. And
yes.
including a bear encounter, which we'd like to forget. But yeah. And then, so Matt was up here for a while, and then he moved down to Washington State. But, and yeah, Alaska is amazing with the wildlife. I can literally walk out the door, and there's 2 moose that are out there right now, right outside my building, cool. So yeah, it's amazing.
I have an armadillo and a possum outside where I live, so I don't quite have as much megafauna close to home. So in Southeast
Texas. I was an animal control officer up here for a little while. So, and oftentimes would get called for things that the state should be called for, but to deal with. But it's been interesting, that's for sure. So you're down there in Texas, and
I'm on the swamps of the Louisiana border. I'm literally where I'm at right now, about 3 miles as an ivory-billed woodpecker would fly into Louisiana, and right here on the border in the swamplands of Southeast Texas.
So that Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana area is just absolutely amazing when it comes to not only wildlife but regular cryptid activity. I mean, it is literally, as we like to say, the Amazon of America. And when I first went down there and started going out with William Lunsford and Stephen Hill, I, having never really done anything in the South before, I was shocked at just how thick the foliage was. And the first thing we did, actually, on the very first night we all got together, was we went out at night and we spent time listening to the forest.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely shocked at how loud the forest was down there.
Yeah, it's if you put recorders out for, trying to get vocalizations, it's really hard for it to cut through in the distance from just the ambient insect noise and stuff. I mean, there's all kind of stuff yelling out here.
Yeah, and one of the first things that William Lunsford and Stephen Hill did with me is they started teaching me the sounds of the forest.
Yeah.
And they were stressing you need to know what an owl sounds like, and you need to know the various animals, and when a fox makes a sound that sounds like a scream. We spent that first night listening to the forest, and it was absolutely amazing, because up here in Alaska, the forest is generally quiet. But so tell us how you got started down this road. I mean, you have like I said, an amazing resume. You've been on all these fantastic shows. You're a journalist. I mean, how did you get started in all this?
I think I was born with an obsession for wildlife. I mean, I love wildlife. I grew up hunting and fishing with my dad. I will watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom on television, Jacques Cousteau ocean specials, and read every wildlife book in the library at school, and all that kind of stuff, and sitting with my dad and cut out pictures of all that game we wanted to hunt and places we wanted to go. So it's always been an obsession of mine. But if you're asking specifically about like the mysterious side of this, it came right here kind of. So this is an old men's adventure magazine called Argosy, and they had the first pictures published of the Patterson-Gimlin creature. And my dad had a copy of it, and I was about, I don't know, must have been 4 or 5, saw the pictures and was just blown away. And, and as I was born in 73. So, even at a very young age, watching television and stuff, there was always stuff about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that out there. And it just seemed to me like an extension of being interested in nature. It seemed like, oh, wow, there's like mysterious stuff out there. And I loved, Scooby-Doo and Kolchak the Night Stalker and all that fun stuff. And it just fit into that. And, pre-internet, there wasn't a lot on it. You would come across a book occasionally, a TV special, maybe once a year. And it always intrigued me, especially John Green's, the best book of Bigfoot that ever be written, period, is Sasquatch the Apes Among Us by John Green. The amount of journalism he had to put to do that was incredible. So I'd read that at the school library and those kind of things. And it just got me into thinking about, nature is awesome, but I really was drawn to like the mysterious side of it because of those things I was exposed to. And I guess the one that really lit the fire was after all of that, I saw The Legend of Boggy Creek on cable television. And as a Southern boy, I was always a pretty smart little kid at like 6 or 7. I went, hold on a second. Bigfoot supposedly lived in the Pacific Northwest. Like that was what it was kind of referenced to. But that was in Arkansas. And I got a map out, and that's right by like East Texas, only like, a few hundred miles from where we're sitting right here. So that got me to thinking about it could be in my own backyard. I didn't think much about it because you didn't hear a lot of reports, but it was certainly, those are the things that kind of my formative years that really inspired me.
So when it comes to Sasquatch specifically,
yeah,
in East Texas, what are some of the memorable moments you've had in the field?
Okay. So before I ever thought Bigfoot could possibly be, well, not possibly, but would be in East Texas, me and my dad and my aunt and uncle were rabbit hunting at night. And the way we used to rabbit hunt at night, and by the way, this was legal, is you put a little headlamp on, and I had my little Sears edition single shot 410, and my dad had a 12 gauge, and my aunt had 83 acres in Newton County, Texas, down in the deep woods. We would just walk her whole fence line, shine for rabbits, go back home, take a couple hours to really dig deep through there. Well, we got down on this creek bottom part, and I'm getting chills right now because I can see that night going in there. And it was really dark and cold. I believe it was like February. We'd always go late in the winter. And we heard this thing, and it started growling at us. And it was not like any other thing I'd even heard really maybe on a movie. It was really intense, guttural, very guttural. And I'm like, Daddy, what's that? He goes, one of Uncle Bill's bulls must be hung up in the barbed wire fence down there. I said, well, let's go get it out. He goes, nah, he'll probably shake himself out. And we just moved out of there. It was very, very intense. And I just pestered my dad, and he said, oh, it must have been a bear. Well, bears have been extirpated from East Texas at this point. But I did know, I was about 10 at this point, that there were bears in central Louisiana, and sometimes subadult males would make it to Texas. So for years, I thought it was a bear. And then I started working with bears in college at a facility, and I went, that wasn't no bear we ran into. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't no bear, because a bear don't sound like that. Well, back in like 95, I got a call from a reader of my newspaper column, my outdoors column, that thought she had a bear that was coming around and got some chickens at her place, and it scared her livestock up on the Sabine River. Well, at this time, there were a few bears starting to come back across the border. So I drove over there, talked to her, interviewed her, and I said, where's the chicken pen? And how did they? And I'm thinking this thing's ripped apart and all this stuff because it's a bear. She said no. And the way they had the top of it was like corrugated metal, and they just had like bungee cords holding it down. She goes, no, the bear lifted the top of it and pulled the chickens out. And I'm going, I know enough about bears. Bears don't do that.
Right.
And she said she'd heard some growls and some weird stuff. So I walked her property, didn't find any tracks. This had been like a few days earlier. But I went to the property next door she gave me access to, and it was an old tree farm, and I found a humanoid looking large track. It didn't have a lot of detail, but it was enough that I drove 20 miles and bought plaster and cast it. And I just thought maybe this could it be, filed in the back of my mind. Well, around 99, some people I know had an encounter with what sounded like it could have been a Bigfoot creature. So I went and investigated. And then I met a guy named Bobby Hamilton, who founded a group called the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization. And we started talking about it, and he was talking about Bigfoot in East Texas. And me and my dad went on an investigation with him in Polk County, which is 2 hours from me. It's near the Coushatta Indian Reservation. And it was one of those night listening missions like you and Bill did. And we went out, and nothing real. There have been reports. People had reports. I mean, the reason we were there is a guy was camping out there in the back of his truck in an air mattress and woke up with this in his face, and freaked him out, right? Freaked all of us out. So we're out there listening, and about 10 o'clock at night over here, we have a little campfire. We hear really weird moan. Pretty far off. Who knows what that is? About midnight, it's right here. About 3 a.m., it's right here. Something did this. Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I had 2 hours of drive. Bobby had an hour, and I had stuff to do the next day. So we just put our fire out, put our guns. Yes, we're Texans. We have guns. Got in the car, got the truck. We're about to get in the truck, and this sound echoed through the forest. It was guttural. It was vile. And here's the key moment. My dad was with me on this trip too. He grabbed me and goes, "This is what we heard at your aunt's." It was the same exact sound. So at that moment, I knew that this phenomenon extended into East Texas because I was listening to a primate. I had just been to Venezuela 8 months earlier, peacock bass fishing in the jungle for a week. And almost every cove we would go into in this lake called Lake Guri down there, we would hear howler monkeys, some close, some way out. Well, one day I got tired of this dang howler monkey howling, and I howled back at it. and it stopped and howled back at me. I did 2, it did 2. I did 3, it went into a frenzy. Well, I don't know what told this knucklehead here to growl at this thing in the bush. I just go, "Rah!" And it stopped. And then it growled once at me. I did 2, and it growled twice at me. And I'm about to go in the bushes, cocked, locked, and ready to rock to go see what's in there. And then a second one growls over here. I went, nope, we're not going in. There's at least 2 or whatever that is. And then when I did another grunt, it broke into a frenzy, and it sounded like a howl, a growl, and a scream all at once. And then when it came in quiet, but when it retreated, it sounded like a bison going through there, man. It was cracking branches and all kind of stuff. And I had never heard the Sierra sounds at this point, but what I heard was absolutely on the Sierra sounds of Ron Moorhead. Some of it. It wasn't the talking kind of thing. It was that guttural stuff. If you go back and listen to the air, that was part of what we heard. But it was very, very, very howler monkey-esque in some parts. But like someone took a howler monkey and gave it everything Arnold Schwarzenegger took from the 70s to the 90s and steroids at once, and got bam. And I knew it was a real phenomenon at that moment. And I spent $2,000 on night vision the next morning. I called it, ordered this back then, very new Generation 3 night goggles. So that was really the best encounter, and that's what got me into doing more actual research at the time on it.
So you mentioned the night vision. So we have a term, and this is obviously a phenomenon that most researchers have experienced at least once. We call it CEI, cryptid electronic interference.
Mm-hmm.
Have you experienced a lot of that in the areas that you research?
Well, considering this is a new term for me, please explain, because I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
So CEI, cryptid electronic interference, is a term that we use to describe when electronics are affected by alleged cryptids being in the vicinity.
No, I've never had
cameras malfunctioning,
never really
batteries going out.
No. Not that I'm aware of. I can't think of any big example of that.
Oh, okay, all right.
I just lucked out, I guess.
Yeah, we've experienced it a couple of times, but we've heard about it so much from other researchers that we just made up a term for it. But so in that area of East Texas, when you're going out in the field, what are some of the wildlife dangers that you face in that area?
Well, please go, everybody, subscribe to Dark Outdoors, where you find all podcasts. Shameless plug. The reason I started that podcast, because I think the number one danger is humans. I even have a decal, and it has like the Phantom Killer from the Texarkana Town the Dreaded Sundown movie, and it says the most dangerous thing in the woods is people. So number one, people, meth growers, crazy people, poachers, predators. That's number one. Wildlife, feral hogs. I mean, there are anywhere between, depending on who you believe, estimates 2.5 and 5 million feral hogs in Texas alone. They're everywhere. I have feral hogs in my neighborhood. That's a high one. Snakes. I mean, we got cottonmouths, we have copperheads, and we have rattlesnakes. So that's another. Those are the main 2 ones. And the other one is kind of one that kind of flies under the radar, but it's an increasing danger, is feral dogs. People dumping off dogs and packs of feral dogs. And I've had 2 run-ins with feral dogs in my own life. And the most downloaded Dark Outdoors podcast is my feral dogs episode. That really resonated with a lot of people. And there's a lot of that in East Texas.
I've heard other people talk about that as well. And as you know, William Lunsford, one of the things him and his wife do is they rescue dogs. And a lot of times, even when I was down there with them, we went out several times out in the country in the middle of nowhere, to catch, some dogs, and I had no idea that people just bring them out there and just drop them off in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, check out this wonderful group that I ran into in the woods. Now that I was driving on this little side road that I go into a spot, and I didn't run into them when I was hiking out there, but it was a Labrador, a Rottweiler, a Pit Bull, and a German Shepherd. Can you imagine if those guys and you're out there by yourself, those large dogs were to come after you, you'd be in trouble, you know? So that's definitely those are all the main dangers here in East Texas in terms of what you might run into in that thick, swampy environment we have. We got alligators, but you know, not too much of a threat.
I got well acquainted with the wild hogs down there outside of Texarkana, and I got chased up a tree, and I didn't realize I could climb a tree that fast.
Oh, you
And
learn quickly. Yes, you learn very
yeah,
quickly in dog country.
fear is a great motivator. And I had wandered away from William, who had the firearm, and yeah, I had to basically fire pole
Oh yeah.
up the tree. And I was being from the north, you know, and not being used to seeing that kind of thing. I was shocked at just how many wild hogs were running around there.
Well, like I said, in Texas alone, you're looking the lowest estimate's 2.5 million. Some believe it's up to 5 million feral hogs here. So Arkansas's got a bunch. Oklahoma has a fair amount. Louisiana has, I know, over 1.5 million. So a lot of pigs.
So in addition to Bigfoot, what are some of the other cryptids that are allegedly spotted in Texas, there in East Texas?
Well, you know, there are things I coined a term years ago called known cryptids. In other words, animals that were supposed to be extinct that we know existed in recent history, but are voila in front of a trail camera, or you know, somebody sees one. One of those is the red wolf, declared extinct in the wild in 1980. I've done a lot of research on that. There's been recent found that there are animals on Galveston Island, Texas, with red wolf DNA, and
Oh wow!
yeah, and it's pretty interesting. And then the ivory-billed woodpecker, which was considered extinct in the 1930s, the biggest woodpecker in North America, and incredible animal. And there have been sightings of that. And you look into the cryptid cats, the Black Panther phenomenon is here. And I have a whole series of that at Chester Moore Wildlife Journalist and Investigator YouTube. I have a whole 8-part series on the Black Panther phenomenon. And that's one that people get just as mad at. Like you're talking about Marzulli coming on, people get mad. When I start talking Black Panthers, people get offended. So it's one of those hot button issues, you know. But those are kind of the main ones here in East Texas. And then I have recently started to get into looking into what I call the feral human phenomenon.
Right, and as a matter of fact, Matt and I just watched that documentary that you and Lyle did, and well done. Tell us about that.
So me and my good friend Paul Fuzinski, we make documentaries together, and me and Lyle were at a conference speaking a couple years back, and Lyle asked me, he goes, "Hey Chester, did you know Rob Riggs?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Did you ever read his book where he mentioned people saw possible Karankawas at East Texas in the Big Thicket in the Old and Lost River?" And I'm like, "I do remember that." And he mentioned a report that he got from someone, and I'm like, we need to look more into that. So typical me fashion, within 3 days, I had filming a documentary about it organized. And so me and Paul and Lyle worked together and gathered reports and went down and filmed this thing. And what we found is there were enough legitimate reports of people seeing what looked like primitive native people that I definitely believe they existed up until probably the 90s at least. But I have a feeling there still could be some out there. And when we did the documentary, we had the Rob Riggs reports from the books. But the only reason we did the documentary is because when I started Dark Outdoors, before I ever was thinking about lost Karankawa tribes or whatever, I called a buddy of mine in law enforcement who lived in a very rural area down in Chambers County. He was a law enforcement officer. And I'm like, if anybody's ever had a shootout with meth heads or something weird in the woods, this guy has probably had it. And he goes, there's a thing. He talked about how there was some illegal drops from airplanes on the shores of the beach there. I'm like, we ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. We ain't going to give that info out. We ain't messing with that deal. Beyond my pay grade. Because then there was a wild man in the Old and Lost River. And I went, like, when I hear wild man nowadays, I think Bigfoot, right? Because that's a Bigfoot term in Texas and other places. And he goes, no, like a man. He told me this story. Well, as I'm looking at the Riggs book, I realized most of these reports were in the Old and Lost River where he told me this. So I called him up and he gave me the story again. And you'll see him masked out on the documentary. And we went and looked and found some interesting stuff. And it got me to thinking about the Bigfoot phenomenon a little differently than I had before. Because there are certain things that I've always had a hard time with a non-human primate doing, like leaving symbols, making certain shapes and different things that are like, trail markers and different things like this. And it got me to thinking maybe, possibly, some of the things that we're seeing out there that look more human may be more human. And maybe some of it is lost tribe. Maybe there's some people that have gone off grid. But my thing on the feral people issue, and I just wrote a book. People can order my book. I'm going to have a special Black Friday sale. It's $15, Feral Humans book. My thoughts on that are this, because you always hear like, some kid was at a farm and his dad was abusive and they threw him in the woods. He kidnapped somebody and they started a small civilization in Smoky Mountain. You kind of hear that kind of stuff. I have a lot more hard time with that than I do some people of the primitive tribal era that cracked the code on how to stay nearly invisible. To me, that makes a little more sense on some of the feral human stuff. And so it's been fascinating. And the cool part about the documentary, which is on my YouTube channel, is that I've gotten some new reports, very valid sounding new reports, enough to go investigate. So that's been an interesting one. And it's one I never thought would, I would never think to set out to look for that, but we certainly have.
I hadn't seen anything really addressing that issue. I mean, we hear of obviously of like lost tribes and things like that in the Amazon. I've been to Brazil, and I was told about a couple down there. We hear that every now and then, but as far as the United States goes, I'd never heard anything like that. So this was a whole new branch, for me watching this documentary. Matt, you watched that documentary as well.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts?
I watched the documentary, and then I went and I actually pulled up Google Earth and I was looking through that whole region there. And I mean, it could be possible. There's enough empty space, unoccupied space out there that, if you have a group of people who have lived in that environment, they grew up avoiding contact, so they know how to do it since childbirth. I mean, highly intelligent. I mean, they're humans. So, I mean, they could do it. I think they could do it.
Well, what's interesting to me is I think even physically, so someone who's grown up almost survival of the fittest, their genealogy, their genetics, they get cut on the foot, they're going to have the antibodies more than someone who's been antibiotic up their whole life, living in civilization thrown out. They would have the right enzymes in their stomach to, they would grow up in that, or they would die. They wouldn't make it past an infant. So to me, it's just fascinating and something I never thought I would be into. But you're right. There's those areas. And another thing is, I think this would fly under the radar easier than Bigfoot. Most of the time, someone looks at one of these areas and sees someone off in the distance. They think it's someone. And people try to avoid people in the woods. The reports that we got from Rob Briggs, and one that we had before the documentary that we did not share on the documentary because we were not able to get the person. They didn't live in the state anymore. We weren't able to arrange an interview that was good. May do it for part. There will be a part 2, but it was because there was like, people who came really close and saw what, oh my God, it looked like a Native American primitive, so and I don't know how we're going to the Smokies next year. I don't know how it ties into that thing out there, but I know that most of what I've dug into on the feral human issue is almost has no basis. Like it goes back to the same story in the Smokies of the one kid who was taken and someone saw a hairy man carrying him in those cases. And there's not a lot of like concrete, this happened at this location. We actually had more meat on the bone from Rob Riggs' research on this than we have on what's really going on in the Smokies. But we've talked to some people who aren't out there on YouTube and live in the Smokies in different areas, and we're starting to get some pretty legit stuff. So we're just kind of researching this issue. And Lyle is a wonderful researcher. And we both have our audiences out there, and we both picked up some things. And, you get Lyle Blackburn and Chester Moore on it, and you get Paul Fuzinski from, by the way, Paul, who did the editing and the filming, has the Wild Man of the Woods YouTube channel. Incredible Bigfoot channel. It's had a few million views, and I'm the narrator. So check out that channel. He's great. And we all work together. Stuff happens. And it was kind of creepy. So that was fun too.
So I know we talked a little bit before the show about when I was speaking at the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference along with William Lunsford, and we were getting quite a few questions about Dogman.
Yeah.
And, for whatever reason, that cryptid seems to be rising in popularity. Yes. And why do you think that is?
It's a good question. I kind of look at it like this. People are impatient. Horror movies sequels are always bloodier, scarier, bloodier. I think Dogman is almost like the sequel to Bigfoot. I have a very hard time with the bipedal werewolf thing running around the woods. I just do. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that. I am open to it being a demonic entity. I am a follower of Christ, and I believe in the supernatural. So I am completely open to something like that. I just don't know. So I'm not really into Dogman. I'm not shooting down anyone who is. But all I know is this. I never heard of such a thing until about 03 or 04. And then now it seems to be taking over. And I kind of have a hard time like there being a 20-year population boom of dogmen around America, So either people are seeing something a different light, or there's something going on. I don't know. It's just a weird one to me. And when it comes to Bigfoot, I was recently asked by someone, by Les Stroud, actually. I was Mr. Survivor Man. I was just recently asked where my exit ramp is on the Bigfoot topic. I said, would UFOs show up? Elvis gets out and we start having portals. And then I kind of go the other direction. And I'm not disparaging anyone, but I am a wildlife journalist. I report on things that are in the wild, that leave tracks, that leave scat, that are an animal or something, or even a human that's wild in the woods. That's my area of expertise. And when it goes into other stuff, I hand it off to other people. Like when it comes to physical evidence kind of stuff, I'm the guy that can go do it. Otherwise, it's just not my thing. And I kind of put Dogman in that category. I'm not saying it's not an existing thing. It's just not something I'm into. But I will say this. On my Dark Outdoors podcast, the outro always says, before entering the woods, pray, prepare, and pack heat. And I'm opening to packing some silver bullets alongside my regular rounds. So there we go.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And when it comes to other cryptids and when it comes to feral people, having now done research in the South with our partners down there, and just seeing how thick those woods are, I remember telling William Lunsford that anything could be in this wilderness. Anything could be out here.
I just had an elephant report. Okay.
What's that?
And I just had an elephant report from East Texas.
Did you really?
And I don't doubt it. I mean, I know there are people that have elephants here, and I know of a case where one got loose and ran around for a few days. And I'm sure that's the case of what happened. But these things, stuff steps off. Like I had a good friend of mine come down about 20 years ago from New York to go do some deer hunting. And I've hunted deer up there with them in New York. And the way they hunt deer in New York, they have like 150 acres of woods surrounded by fields or like cornfields or something. And they'll put a guy on one point and they'll do a drive. They slowly walk and push the deer toward the hunter. He gets up in the morning. So we're going to do a deer drive, boys. I said, where are we going to drive them to? Mexico? I said, This whole thing is thick. I mean, like you don't just drive. You can't even walk through this stuff half the time, you know? It is so thick. And it wasn't always like that. A lot of these Texas, you know, pre-timber company stuff was open, like big giant pines and open pine savanna country. And it got a lot thicker over the years. And it's, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that people never, ever, ever see. And really, that's one of the things that motivates me is, like, for example, I'm going to Oklahoma in the morning. Me and my family are going up to go up, do a little trout fishing and just to get away for a few days, bringing my fly rod. And I love when I make a cast, whether it's a roadside ditch in Orange, Texas, or if I'm in Yellowstone, which I've done both, figuring out what's under that water. And I've never looked at a mountain, boys, and not wondered, I wonder if there is a bighorn up there. I wonder if there's a big old massive bull elk or a big mule deer. And I never passed a pasture with woods on the edge here going, I wonder if there's a bobcat hanging out there. And when I go into the thickets of East Texas, I realize all something has to do is step over here and you'll never see it. And there are hogs, and this is something I'm working on, a new project. I mean, I've been working on hog. I've written a hog book years ago, but I've been working on a new hog project over a few months, and it's going to probably take another 6 months to finish it, about like ginormous hogs, like mutant-sized hogs. And I'm very aware of a few hogs that are 700 to maybe 1,000 pounds, and hardly anyone ever sees them. I found a track of a feral hog here that was that big. It was the size of an elk. And so all it has to do is avoid a few people, you know, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think that's the important part of this, you know, in the cryptid world. I'm sure that I look at it as a blessing in my life. I got to meet you two gentlemen through the cryptid world. I got to meet one of my childhood heroes, Bob Yemlin, through the cryptid world. My good friend, Lyle Blackburn, through the cryptid world. Craig Woolheater, all these people that I love. Shelly Montana, all these people that I love. Bill, you know, different people that I love. And I think it's something that, unfortunately, people get dogmatic about different views on stuff, which I think is absolutely absurd. There's no Bigfoot expert. There's Bigfoot lore experts.
Right.
But not on the Bigfoot. We hadn't even proven it to science yet. So fighting and hating each other and all is ridiculous. I think we should celebrate.
Oh, yes.
I think we should celebrate. We're a community of people that like to play Scooby-Doo, because that's what we're doing. We're going out in the woods in the camouflage mystery machine with our Bigfoot decal on the back, and we're looking for monsters, you know. And back on Scooby-Doo back in the day, you know, like, old Shaggy would walk up for somebody and they'd pull and the mask would come off old Mr. Johnson. It wasn't a gorilla, man. It was Mr. Johnson. But what's cool about what we do, if you've done it long enough, you know, one day somebody's going to walk up to pull that mask off and it ain't coming off. And I think that's what we all look for. I think we should celebrate this thing that we do more than we do. I think it's a blessing, and it's an adventure. You know, if you told me when I was looking at these pictures, when I was a little bitty boy, like 5 years old, that one day I would be in the woods hearing something that might very well be that thing, I said, you're crazy. I remember telling my dad one time, we were deer hunting, and I must have been like 15 or 16. I'm like, you know what? As much as I would love to take a really big Boone and Crockett whitetail buck, I think I'd rather make my own plaster cast of a Bigfoot one day. That'd be like a bigger trophy to me. And I've got multiple of those over in a glass case in my house. So I just think we should celebrate this a little more and, you know, just not hate on each other as much, you know, like my stance on one thing is probably different than your stance on another, but man, who cares? The whole rest of the world thinks we're psychos. So why can't we at least like each other, you know?
That's true. And you know, that what you're talking about and celebrating. And as you can see behind Matt, he has the network logo behind him, our Cryptid Wilderness Research Network. And that's one of the reasons that we actually formed this network. And it's just a bunch of researchers working together in cooperation and not competition. We've got people all over the spectrum. We've got people on the North American primate side of the house. We've got people on the extraterrestrial side of the house, interdimensional,
Yep.
Nephilim connection. We've got them all across the spectrum, and we're all just working together and getting along. And life is all about connections, and you're only one connection away from your dream. And so if I have a question in my research that I'm stumbling with, there's somebody in the network I can reach out to. Like, I'm not too versed in the audio section, but I know I can call James Lady in the Michigan Aboriginal Project, who's really good with that, and he can give me pointers. So it's all working together. And like you said, it's celebrating this great quest of ours. But it's met some wonderful people, and it has been a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, if you would ever sit and listen to me and Lyle Blackburn talk, you'd think we're brothers. Just the stuff that we have in common, and we met through Bigfoot. And Paul Fazinski, he's a guy who's helped me tremendously on some technical things that have helped, different field research, not only for this but for other wildlife. And so Shelly Montana and her tracking stuff, there's always cool. She called me the other day talking about environmental DNA project. I mean, just cool stuff. And I think we should. And so here's a hint: if you come to me at an event and you want to talk any stuff, I'm cool. But the moment stuff gets negative, I'm gone. If you post a negative, crazy stuff on my social media, delete it and block. I don't allow it in my life. I have a children's ministry that me and my wife do. We work with kids with real problems in life, not whether somebody believes our Bigfoot theory or not. We work with kids that have been abused and neglected and sold and have cancer, and give them wildlife encounters. And so for me to get really intense because some guy doesn't like my theory on Bigfoot would be silly for me personally. I'm like, well, whatever, I don't care. I'd rather spend my energy helping those kids, giving them encounters, than I would some knucklehead who wants to prove to the world his Bigfoot theory is right or wrong,
Absolutely. And let's talk about that. I took a look at the Wild Wishes site that you have, and such a great outreach ministry, and such a fantastic thing to do. Tell us about this program that you guys founded, and tell us some experiences that you've had with that.
Well, I'm a follower of Christ, and my wife and I are both followers, and we wanted to find a way to show his redeeming love to kids that we've always loved. Even when we were heathens, we love kids. We want to find a way to help kids that have been through stuff. And my whole world outside of this revolves around wildlife in some way, and my profession and everything else. So we started serving in our church, and our children's minister at the time was like 23. He goes, "Hey, Chester, hey, could you go catch a snake for next week's object lesson?" And I went and caught like a rat snake. And then and a month later, "Can you go catch a turtle?" And then it kind of developed there. But one day what really got it going crazy is I'm walking down the hall of church, and there's a young girl named Nayeli who had just lost her daddy to an industrial accident. Nayeli was like 11, maybe 12. And the Holy Spirit said, "Ask her favorite animal and take her to meet it." So I walk up and say, "Hey, baby, what's your favorite animal?" She goes, "A zebra, Mr. Chester." I said, "You want to meet one?" She goes, "Is that possible?" She asked. I said, "It will be." And that began our first Wild Wishes program, where we take kids, we let them come to our facility. We have a small amount of exotic animals they can come meet. We're not open to the public. It's only for their private encounters. And we take them, if they have a specific animal they're really into, we take them somewhere to meet it. She got to meet 2 zebras named Zeus and Zeta that come up and loved on her, and she got photos with. And I'm happy to.
Is that the photo that's on the site? Because there's
that's her. That's her.
Yeah, I was looking at that photo and I was like, wow, she's that close to that zebra.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Out of her hand. The female Zeta would eat right out of her hand, and Zeus would stand there and look at her. She could pet him. Now, and that was a trick, because there's plenty of zebras in Texas, but they're crazy. Like, they're loco. They sound like a donkey on meth. I mean, they're crazy. Beautiful animals. They're wild. These were really sweet. And last weekend, I'm grateful to say that we granted our 300th Wild Wish last weekend to a kid.
Excellent.
And it was young ladies that came in the foster system, and we got to give them the encounters and everything. And that's such an important thing, man. We treat animals in our culture better than kids. I mean,
so true.
We
So
do.
true.
I mean, if I guarantee you look at social media and see where a kid is abused in a story versus some animal that's abused, and it's not even comparable. And so we try to find kids that love wildlife and do things. Honestly, the third wild wish way back in 2014 we ever did was a Bigfoot expedition in the
Oh,
big
wow.
Now, no pressure. Like finding a zebra is one thing, right? Finding a zebra is one thing. And the next one was a wolf. Wolf wasn't too bad. A Bigfoot expedition. Well, no pressure because it's not like these things walk up and just hang out. I mean, some people will tell you that, but I'm a little suspicious. But we're going out, and I told them, I said, I can't promise any action, but I will take you to a good area where I filmed the Animal X episode I did with Natalie Schmidt and Daniel Searle. And there's a history of reports. And we took this kid and his best friend and both of their families, me and my dad did. And they found a mountain lion track, which is the only mountain lion track I've ever found out there, which was kind of cool. We cast it. That was exciting. And we had a few things like that. Then it got dark. And I'm like, okay, Lord, here we go. And I let out a whoop, whoop. And then we had an answer like that, but it was way off. And the kid heard it, though. Mr. Chester, did you hear that? I said, I don't know what that was, but it was similar to what I did. And we heard a few more things way out, and then got late. Everybody's getting tired. It's a long ride where we were. I said, well, by the time we get out of here, it's about 6 or 7 miles. So I'm just going to stop 3 more places and call. If nothing happens, did my best. They were happy. We stopped at 2 places, and I'm tired. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. My dad goes, you said 3 spots. I put my foot, I braked right there, pulled over. This is where I knew someone else was helping me out in this process. I said, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this. It's great. It's my last shot. Who knows? And I let out a primate yell, and this thing couldn't have been 30 to 40 yards in the bushes when it yelled back at us. Full blast. And I'm watching people jump in their cars and truck beds and stuff like this. And it's me and my dad, the kid's dad, and the kid. Everybody else is in vehicles at this point. And the kid looks at me and said, this is the most awesome day of my life. That's what it was about. Because what happens, gentlemen and listeners, is this. A tragedy happens. This little boy had lost his brother in a drowning accident. It could be a little girl who was raped. It could be someone with a cancer diagnosis or whatever. But it could be all this stuff. And if it happens on March the 15th, in our minds, life never gets better than March the 14th. And we want to let them know that good things can still happen in their life. Dreams can still come true, that God loves them and we love them. And that's why we do the Wild Wishes program. We've also taken that into a thing called Higher Calling Wildlife, which is the expedition branch, where we go take them and do photography in beautiful places like near Estes Park, Colorado. And we've done it in Grand Teton and Yellowstone areas. We've done it in the Smoky Mountain, done it in the Everglades. And we're going to be doing more of that. So if anyone wants to contribute to that project, it's a 501c3. It's a tax-deductible donation, and we're, of course, behind on money, always are, trying to get this stuff planned. It's expensive to plan this stuff, but we're going to be doing a lot more. We got a lot more kids we're working with, and we would love to help more kids. Also, if you're listening and you have a kid that we can help that might love wildlife, that's going through something, shoot us a message. Shoot me a message, chester@chestermoore.com, and I'll be glad to figure out a way to help them.
What an amazing ministry, and it's making memories for a lifetime, and helping in the healing, and just fantastic. And having worked with kids in Haiti myself,
Wow.
I am very thankful for ministries that work with the kids. So
God bless
great
you for
job.
going to Haiti. If there's ever been a hell zone in the Western Hemisphere, that's it. And I heard, the big earthquake that hit. I don't know when that earthquake was. Might have been 2010 or something like that, maybe. The big giant earthquake. I heard someone say Haiti is the greatest tragedy in the history of the Western Hemisphere, and then the earthquake happened. So God bless you for doing that work.
I didn't do it for very long, but the experience was life-changing.
Amen.
And Haiti was bad before the earthquake.
Exactly, yeah.
And I saw poverty there like I had never imagined. And honestly, every every believer should do at least one mission trip in their life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it will really change your perspective. And
Sure, man.
what a fantastic ministry outreach you guys have, and we encourage everyone to take a look at that website and see what they got going on. Before we close here, I want to throw the ball over to Matt and have Matt check in. And what's on your mind, man?
I just want to say that your outreach program that you work on there, it just sounds amazing and beautiful.
Appreciate it, man. It's
humbling. I'm blown away that programs like that exist. It's wonderful.
It's humbling, man, to get to do it. I'm grateful. I'm very grateful that we have the opportunity to do it, because we love kids, and it's a nice way to reach them in a non-religious way, and to just let them know that they are loved, and then God loves them and we love them, and without any pretense, and just do some cool, fun stuff with them, man. That's what it's about,
It's very, very cool.
Yeah. So what do you got coming up?
Oh, man. Let me think. There's a lot of stuff. Let's see. I released a documentary, not only the feral humans, but earlier this summer we released Gulf Great White Sharks, Return of an Icon, my Gulf Great White Shark Society. I have a new shark video dropping on my YouTube channel about the great whites are returning as we speak, heading to the Gulf right now. There's a migration to the Gulf, and we've definitely proven that white sharks are in the Gulf. You can check that out, and my gulfgreatwhites.com blog. That's always something going on there. Dark Outdoors website, got a new blog on there, and constantly working on uncovering the mysteries of nature. And that's a fun thing. And I'll just share something fun, because, one of the things that happens in our culture is sort of a meat grinder at this point. I mean, it's tough out there, and a lot of us feel beaten down. I mean, I'm one of them sometimes, and sometimes we think, like these kids that go through stuff, that maybe the dreams of the past have passed us up, right? I think people sometimes get in that mode. And I want to give an inspirational word to someone right now. I had a thing as a kid that I just thought was the coolest story ever. And my uncle and my dad hunted a deer lease in San Saba County, Texas, which is about 5.5 hours, 6 hours, like west central Texas from us. And my uncle told a story of seeing about a fully developed 8-point buck with a big rack for his size that was about 40, 50 pounds. Like, he was standing among other deer, and he was little bitty, like dwarf deer. And he saw him several times on this lease. And I thought that was just interesting, like a dwarf whitetail among regular size whitetail. Well, at my uncle's funeral about 13, 14 years ago, I mentioned that, and my dad goes, "Hey, I saw the same kind of deer on that same lease." And it was always like a childhood mystery. Well, my good friend Larry Wazoon is one of the top wildlife, they call him Mr. Whitetail, and he's one of the top whitetail hunters and whitetail biologists in the world. And I told him that story. He looked at me, he goes, "Chester, I was doing surveys for a university back in, I think it was Texas A&M, in the mid 1970s, and we had to go kill whitetails from every county and survey them for disease risk and stuff. I shot a whitetail then that was the same size, and guess what county it was in? San Saba County, Texas." Well, I did a YouTube video on my channel, and a man on a deer lease in San Saba County, Texas, sent me a picture of his feeder of about 130-pound buck and a little 8-point buck right behind him, fully developed. So something I thought about as a kid was proven true later on. So don't ever think something from the past, you can't go back and kind of re-engage it and have good things happen. That's just a little fun story from my life, but it involves the mysterious wildlife we all love. And then I've got reports of these all over the country. And I'll be going and film some stuff with key deer, which are known to be that small, down in the Florida Keys here real soon with Paul Fazinski. So lots of fun stuff going on.
Well, Chester, it's been a pleasure having you on. And we know you got a trip coming up in the morning, so we don't want to keep you too much longer. So, yeah, we encourage everybody to check out chestermore.com, his various documentaries and work that he has on YouTube. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate it. Matt, why don't you bring us home?
All right. Yeah. Well, like Dan was saying, thank you for coming on tonight, and a lot of good information just about the cryptids, about wildlife, and especially about your outreach program. It's just such wonderful information, and the help that you provide to the children is just amazing. It's so great to hear that.
Appreciate it, buddy.
And your stories about cryptids is just they're riveting too. It's great.
Fun. Well, guys, you guys have been a lot of fun, but I wasn't going to give this information publicly, but I feel led to give it on your show. So to give it out here first. You asked what I'm doing. I got something I haven't mentioned publicly yet, but we're going to drop it here first because you guys have been so awesome and are so open to talking about cool stuff. So my Higher Calling Wildlife branch, I will be starting a new web series in January called Higher Calling Wildlife. And it's going to be an inspirational, conservation-centric wildlife documentary type series hosted by me every month. It'll be on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to film the first episodes. We're doing some really cool stuff. And we're going to try to tie in kids where we can in our program to get involved and actually be on the shows and stuff like that. So anyway, you guys are the first to hear this. And I just want to let your audience know these guys are awesome.
Thank you very much for that privilege. And we're going to be watching what you got in the future. And you got a lot of stuff going on. And it's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And you take care of yourself. You guys have safe travels.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be praying for your safety and that new adventures await.
Amen.
So for myself up here in Alaska, for my partner down there in the Pacific Northwest, south of me, thank you for joining us from the Cryptid Wilderness Research Podcast. We'll see you next time.